TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. Your friendly neighborhood philosopher here, D. Wood. We've got some gloomy people out here. The UK has fallen. My goodness, man. My goodness. My goodness. Fallen? No. Falling? Yeah. I guess you could say fallen in the sense that, like, even though you're falling, like, everyone in a position of power basically is making sure that it continues falling. And so it kind of looks like you're falling with the setup you've got right now. Anyway, you late, David. You late. Ha! Prove it. Prove that I'm not here exactly when I wanted to be. We have Ramadan shenanigans. Yes. Happy Ramadan. Ramadan Kareem to everyone who's pretending to fast for an entire month, gorging yourself with food multiple times per day and calling it fasting. Good times, good times. So anyway, was not planning on going live tonight. AP's still not consistent in his scheduling and stuff and the various things he has to do. So he's still told him to do all the stuff he's got to do, and then try to get back on at least a solid Saturday, Sunday schedule and so on. But yeah, we'll see what happens. So anyway, yesterday went to the Times Square Ramadan prayer show, the Ramadan prayer extravaganza, where they gather in the middle of Times Square surrounded by all these signs with like women's butts in every direction and so on. And then they bow down, even though Muhammad said if you bow down and there's a woman or a dog passing in front of you, your prayers are nullified, and there's women and dogs all up in front of them and so on. Actually have a video posted on X of Hatun was actually standing in front of them with a dog, and they're bowing down. It's like, your prophet says your prayers are canceled. What are you doing here? But yeah, it's all a total show. It was me, Anthony, Hatun, and Drake went up there. One of my sons came with me as well, was recording with the camera and so on. Anyway, we went up there, and then other people showed up as well. And so we were there for several hours, got a ton of footage. I'm going to go through all that footage tonight. Well, I mean, it's probably like 15 hours of footage combined with what other people have posted to get through all this stuff and then pick out the best stuff and so on. But anyway, I'm going to go through all that. I'll probably make one video about some of the interesting takeaways from that event. So I'll probably make a video on that. And then Monday, we'll see how things go. Monday, going to go live with Anthony and Hatun, and we'll check out some of the highlights of that. But yeah, so we got there. The stuff started after 5. We got there. We got to New York City like 3:45-ish, and we parked nearby. And so we parked nearby, walked over there. All the stuff was sitting out. It was funny. My son and I we didn't dress for the cold. It was actually a really stupid mistake. But I was thinking, okay, it's supposed to be around 40 degrees at 4 or 5 o'clock, and then it's going to get a little bit colder. But I'm fine in the 30s in just, jeans and a hoodie, right? Fine. What I didn't realize was when I was thinking I'm fine in the 30s with jeans and a hoodie, that's like going to the store, not standing there all day, right? So we were outside from 3:45 till probably 11, and yeah, we got pretty cold out there, pretty cold. So anyway, then we drove back all night long. I posted a couple of clips along the way. And today I was going to focus on getting footage together and stuff. But yeah, again, wasn't planning on going live, but this was about 6, maybe a little after 6 p.m. So 2 hours ago, I was about to watch a clip of Saad talking to Piers Morgan. Saad had posted it separately and stuff. And then I went and looked to see what he had done. But Piers Morgan had an entire show with various guests, and they were talking. And then at the end of the show, he had a discussion with Saad on what's going on in the UK with Islamization and so on. And it was a question of whether Gad will be able to talk some sense into Piers Morgan, who he's obsessed with, but no, I have Muslim friends and they're nice, so Islam can't possibly be a danger. There's just bad apples in every group and so on. So I was wondering if Gad could break it down. Anyway, point was, I was around 6 and I was about to watch that, and it's about like 15 or 20 minutes, the section with Saad. So I was about to watch that, and then I was just thinking, well, if I just, set it up for 8, I can watch it live and react to it live. So in other words, if I'm going to watch something, I've said this before, if I'm going to watch something and it's something that other people might want to watch, then I'll just, instead of watching it, I'll just say, well, I'll just load it up and watch it together, guys. We'll watch it all together. Where's Apostate? I don't know. I mean, I kind of know, but yeah. He's not consistent. Part of me wants to just grab him and shake him and say, just get it together, man. Get it together. But I found out when we were in Israel, he kind of goes through some phases and stuff. Plus it gets combined with what's called creator burnout. But yeah, your brain actually can periodically burn out, and then it's hard jump starting once if you get creator burnout, then you can kind of keep going and stuff. But if there's ever a time you stop for a while, then it's hard to get back going consistently again. So you guys may remember times where I was putting out a video almost every day. Almost every day, and then totally burned out, and never gotten back to that like that consistency where just loved preparing all the content, then recording, then editing, then posting, then starting on the next one and so on. And yeah, you burn out after a while, and it's like, oh no, I gotta make a video. So anyway, yeah, people got to take breaks here and there. So anyway, yeah, we'll get back to it. We had a question, who is Drake? If you've seen some of God Logic's, events where he's in public, there's lots of times a big giant white dude, bigger than me. So I'm about 240 pounds, 6'3". There's a guy who'll be around who's bigger than I am, and that's Drake. And first time I ever saw Drake is when we went to Speaker's Corner a couple years ago, and I've mentioned this multiple times before, but I normally wear sunglasses if I'm out where. If I wear Ray-Bans, if I'm out in a place like that, and I wear sunglasses so that if, because I'm scanning people, I may be talking to one person, but I might be scanning around, see if there's anyone who might want to plunge a knife into me or something like that. Anyway, so we were in the UK, and these two guys, they were fully masked up. And those are the kinds of guys who will like work their way in, come in and stab. They did that to Hatun when dude stabbed her, came in with a mask on and stuff. Anyway, there was two guys. And I'm sitting there having a conversation, and they're like circling the crowd and getting closer and stuff, but they just had like rage in their eyes. And anyway, I'm watching them, see if they're going to make their move and so on. And then Drake walks by and says something to one of them, and they turn and they say something back, and he says something back, and then I just watch the guys walk away. So apparently Drake put the fear into their hearts real quick. So yep, cool guy, but he's also cool because he's a big muscle-bound dude who could be a good deterrent. It was really cool having him there because Hatun was in Times Square, and basically, Hatun never asks for any sort of protection or anything. But if I'm around, I'm gonna make sure that someone's watching over Hatun. So wanted either Drake or my son sort of next to Hatun in case someone decides to do something. But Drake's also cool because he knows apologetics. He goes live with people and stuff like that. He knows apologetics too. So yep. So Drake's pretty cool. Anyway, crazy stuff there. But awesome, fun times in Times Square. So anyway, I posted a few clips on X, and I posted a video here on YouTube earlier today. Lots of people watching that, but we'll have way more to come soon after I go through all this footage. Interesting things, guys. Interesting things. They were you had a bunch of guys who were playing nice, and you see, we're the better people, and we're just gathering for prayer. Why would anyone have a problem with that? And then you start listening to the things they're saying, and let's just say their true colors. Their true colors come shining through, as they so often do. So we'll have some stuff on that here. But anyway, just wanted to go through this Gad's Sad clip, and depending on this how this goes, tomorrow I might want to check out the rest of it, where they have a big discussion on the grooming gangs and so on in the UK, and people flipping out about that and saying, "No, you got to pay attention to other stuff. Don't look over here." So we'll be checking that out. But right now, we're just going to go through this Gad's Sad clip. Let's take these first few super chats, then we'll jump into the video. When Jesus said no one knows the hour, I think he was talking about when you start your live streams. Very rude. Very rude. D. Wood, were you actually in New York City, Times Square, confronting those publicly praying Muslims on their hypocrisy in praying and fasting? Their reaction. They were ignoring us until... So I was right beside them when I was recording that video. The video that I posted a couple hours ago, I posted that last night on X. There was a ton of background noise because they're blasting their prayer stuff while I'm recording, but you could still hear my words, so I went ahead and posted it like that. But then Thaddeus told me that he can actually reduce the background noise better than just my video editing program. Will reduce it a little bit and stuff, but he reduced it more. So I had a better version that I posted on YouTube. But no, that was just me standing right beside them. That was me standing right beside them talking about Jesus. And there was no reaction. They were told not to react to us during all their prayers and so on. Some of their leaders did anyway, and some of the people who are kind of walking around did anyway. And that's some of the stuff that's actually funny. I didn't know. I had no idea who the guy was who was running it. I think he's actually big on social media and stuff, on TikTok and on YouTube, but I had no clue who he was. But man, he knew me, and he's telling people to ignore us, but then he kept talking about me. Like before I was saying anything, I'm just sitting there. I'm sitting there talking to someone, and all of a sudden, he's the guy who's like running the event, and he's on the microphone. He's like, "And what about David Wood? What about David Wood? Hey, David Wood." And then he started calling me David Plastic and stuff. But I'm sitting there minding my own business over on the side, and then I hear, "David Plastic, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, what? Is he talking about me again? So it's actually wild stuff that I just have to show up somewhere. And then these guys who are running their prayers start focusing on me. Weird stuff. But yeah, we'll check out all that. But yeah, Apu Pakar Al Puff Daddy. We were actually there. The video that I recorded is, I didn't dub that later. I was just recording and talking while I was standing beside them. So, I'll say afterwards, after they dismissed, then they were reacting. They surrounded us. And I'll include this in the video, but there's a pattern with all of this. Like they're captive in a sense, in that they're supposed to be sitting down for prayer. So they're under the leadership of whoever's running this prayer and stuff like this. And he's telling them, hey, do not react. Just sit there and focus on your prayers. And they'll do that. But then afterwards, what happens immediately afterwards is all the hotheads who were like reaching the boiling point. They're reaching the boiling point, and they're like struggling to maintain their composure while praying. And then all of a sudden, okay, we're all done here. Then they jump up and they run for you. So then you get the hotheads who are like screaming at you. So we got surrounded and they were screaming at us and stuff. Me, Anthony, Hatun, and some of the other people who were there. But then after a while, after you deal with the hotheads for 30 minutes to an hour, I'm just saying this because this happens every time there's an event like this. For 30 minutes to an hour, you deal with the hotheads, and then the hotheads kind of get distracted because someone will start arguing with them, and they'll sort of like go off to this. They'll end up all over on the side talking to someone who's arguing with them. But then you end up in like more serious conversations with some Muslims. So I've dealt with the hotheads for a little while, and then just got into regular, normal conversations with some Muslims out there. But one of the things I want to point out in the video is like, these guys are still using Islamic apologetics from like 20 years ago. Like they're still saying there's only one Quran perfectly preserved. And that was like surprising me. You think, okay, holes in the narrative stuff was years ago. That's all been exposed. None of the Dawa guys uses perfect preservation anymore. But you're talking to regular Muslims in New York City, they're still going like perfect preservation and things like that. And it's and there's only one Quran, and there's not any variant between any two Qurans and stuff. It's like, really, where have you guys been? So point there is we still got a lot of work to do, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of work to do. Happy Ramadan. Yes, happy Ramadan month to everyone. The Da'i that deny Jesus are upset over blasphemy. Yeah, that's what's funny. I'm going to respond to that this week, too. We're not going to debate you because you blaspheme. Okay, all you guys blaspheme. All you guys blaspheme. What are you doing? Hang on. Hang on. What is this? We got someone calling in here. What is this? Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up? What's going on? Can you hear me okay?
You're not in your studio, man. Yeah, I hear you fine.
Yeah, we're traveling right now. I saw you were live though, so I wanted to come on and see what's going on.
Yep, we're just going to watch this clip here. What were you paying attention to yesterday? Because you sent us a clip, and it was a clip of the Warner. Yeah. So guys, I only saw him I didn't see him when he was at a table, because I would have had some fun things to discuss with him about Malik and about smashing hoes and running trains, and him sitting in the watcher chair watching other guys run trains and stuff like that. All the stuff that got reported about the Warner, and him taking Dawa donations and spending them on drugs and so on. Would have loved to ask about that, but by the time I got there a few minutes later. I got there a few minutes later than Anthony and Drake and Hatun were already over there. So we got there a little. Me and my son got there a little bit later, but right before we got there, the Warner was at a table and he saw Anthony and decided to flex on Anthony.
Yeah,
which is crazy. The Warner's got to be 6'5", probably 330 pounds or something like that. And he goes after Anthony. And then Drake steps up, and apparently the Warner did one of these motions and so on.
yeah.
So anyway, we'll be checking that out. But what's up, Jai?
So yeah, I saw that. I saw that the Warner was live streaming it, and so I wanted to see. I wonder if I can see David and the crew and everyone through Warner's live stream. So I checked it out, and yeah, I saw Hatun, Anthony, and Drake, and that's what I saw. I saw that section where they had the guy who was on the loudspeaker, who was a big fan of you guys. He was saying that, oh, there's someone who even came from the UK. They got a visa just to show their hatred. How much you have to hate Islam just to, something like that, or something like that. And then Anthony took that as as an opportunity. He's like, okay, well, this guy's he's calling us out, so why don't we come up and let him know what's going on? So he just shouted Jesus is Lord, and the Warner was there, and Warner was like, are you that intimidated? Are you that intimidated that you have to say Jesus is Lord? Are you that intimidated? And the way he stepped at Anthony was, you could tell he was trying to intimidate him. So Drake came in real quick.
Well, hang on. Here's what's funny, right? So Anthony is way smaller than the Warner, which means you're a total punk for trying to flex on him if you're the Warner.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. I've been rolling with Anthony a long time. That dude ain't scared of anything. He is not scared. I've seen him surrounded by Hebrew Israelites who were all strapped with open carry guns, and one of them looked more enraged than possibly I've ever seen anyone in my life. He looked like he was just about to snap and lose his mind. And Anthony started just cracking up laughing at him. He was just laughing hysterically at how enraged this guy was getting, how his eyeballs were bugging out of his head and stuff like that. So yeah, I know he's just not scared. You can't scare Anthony. That's kind of true of most ex-cons. You spent years of your life, surrounded by criminals and stuff like that. Like one dude or two dudes or something like that running their mouths on the street. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm super scared, especially the Warner, the Watcher, the guy who wants to. His words, guys, if you're new here, he wants to take it up the butt in order to get into the Illuminati and stuff like that. And I'm gonna flex on Anthony. What a dork, man. Warner, you're a total dork, man. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So I clipped that. I posted the clip on X, and I wrote like a little comment, and it's like, I think it's like 55K views on X right now. So,
Mm,
and I'm not even verified, and so that's like doing really good for my from my perspective. But when you see the clip, because you know, I think that there's a couple different angles that Drake found, and what we're going to try to do is compile them all together so you can kind of get like a vision of what's going on. But the police come up afterwards to the Warner, and he says that, hey, these guys are trying to like bait you, they're trying to get a reaction of you, these guys are professionals, like they're basically saying that you guys were all like professional like rage baiters or whatever. You guys are trying to get a reaction from the Warner. And the Warner does this thing where he like basically says, like, he's like to Drake
mm,
right in front of the New York Police Department, and they, you know, NYPD, and they do nothing. They don't care. They know what that means, right? They know what that means.
hmm.
They're trained in like gangs and all these sorts of like street, you know, body language and all this stuff, and they know what that means, but they didn't do anything because they were viewing the Christians as the, you know, provocateurs, and, you know, you guys are the problems, when he's the one making death threats. Essentially, that's what that is. It's a death threat.
Yeah, and the real takeaway from everything is what just a show this is. There's another
Mhm.
clip I saw. I have to go and find it, but there's another clip I saw where, I mean, they're like they're doing their prayers. Like some of the times they're sitting there, some of the times they're just eating, but they're doing their prayers. And there's a guy taking pictures, and he kind of
Yeah.
steps in front of Warner's camera just a little bit, and the Warner who's there all lined up for prayer, he's like all he cares about is being filmed. All he cares about is being filmed besides Sneeko and stuff. And it's like he is not even focused on the prayer that he's in the middle of. He's in the. Can you imagine you're in the middle of a prayer, you're reciting, and then you're like, "Hey, get out of my way! Get out of the way of the camera, man! Look out! There, get out! That's my camera there!
Oh
Get
yeah,
out!"
that was one of the things that I noticed as well. They were doing like the hand motions. Even Sneeko was doing the correct hand motions. Warner was there texting on his phone when they were like, you know, you know how they raised their hands up like that. Like Warner completely missed that step
Mm-hmm.
because he was too busy telling the guy, "Hey, don't go in front of my camera." He's texting, and it's just kind of funny how they put Warner and Sneeko up in the front row
Up in the front, yeah,
when it's, yeah, it's like this is like such a show. You know, it's like such a show, and
total
they don't
show.
care about Islam, like, you know, actually practicing it. They're just trying to, you know, show dominance to, you know, to the Americans. Basically, that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah. What's crazy is I never the entire time noticed that Sneeko was there. I mean, I was there filming the front row
Oh,
and stuff. I
okay.
just never paid attention to. I didn't see that Sneeko was there until we already took off, and then I started seeing pictures of Sneeko in the front. I was like, oh man, I wasn't even paying attention because
Yeah.
that'd have been interesting. Could have asked him some questions about some of the interesting stuff that came out with Malik. Fun stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, so here's Sneeko and Warner. They're in New York, and it's Ramadan. I think it was like last Ramadan. That's when they went to Bosnia. So I'm thinking, what's the trip this year? Where are they
Mm.
going this year?
Yeah, they were already. I saw they posted a video of them all doing dawah, all giving dawah today in the park. So that's the pattern. They give dawah, they record it, post it. Everyone says, "Oh, you're heroes," and then they go. In
Yeah.
Malik's words, they go out smashing hoes and hit the clubs and all that stuff. So yeah, gotta love the dawah life. Gotta love the dawah life.
Yeah.
All right, let's go through these super chats and then we'll check out this Gad Sad versus Pierce Morgan. The Dai that deny Jesus are upset over blasphemy. Yeah, that's what's funny. These guys are like extremely blasphemous. They threaten people. They all defend child marriage and so on. Um, like sick evil stuff. Sick evil stuff. But then they'll be like, "You guys are blaspheming. We won't debate you anymore." It's like, shut up, guys. If you want to debate us, don't debate us. But don't make this your stupid excuse when you're a bunch of cowards.
Yeah, they
We
always try
won't,
to
we won't,
pretend
we
like
won't,
it's
we won't debate you if you don't do what you want. I keep telling people they're obsessed with control, and they try this. Oh, the threats aren't working. This isn't working. This isn't working. Whining about Islamophobia. That's not working. This isn't working. We'll dox you. That's not working. We'll go after your family. That's not working. Oh, now we won't debate you. That'll make you stop what you're doing. Yeah, good luck with that. I'm gonna have a response. Well, I'll go through that in a couple days, and I'll have a good response to that. We'll probably involve a Quran. We'll see what happens,
nice.
man. See what happens. Check out Ray Ibrahim's latest video on the Hungarian TV production on the life of John Hunyadi. Also, oh, and his pets crashed the video at the end. Pets. Better not be dogs. Dogs are haram.
I think Raymond Ibrahim was on. He was. I don't know if that's what this is referring to, but he was on. Being interviewed by some like some popular host. I forget his name, but you probably know who he is. And the cameraman was like super woke, and so it ended up turning into like a debate between between Raymond Ibrahim and the cameraman. This
That's
with
pretty
some woke
funny.
cameraman. Yeah,
I would predict Raymond Ibrahim crushed him.
yeah, yeah.
Ramadan, the pagan holidays of gorging while calling it ritual starvation. Happy diabetes, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do have that problem. They have all sorts of health complications. And it's not health complications from fasting. It's not from fasting. It's health complications from binge eating. Binge eating. That's the health complications.
Yeah, exactly.
Canada versus USA Olympic hockey gold medal prediction. Yeah, I haven't watched hockey ever. I think I went to one hockey game ever, but not my sport. But normally ice sports, you have to give Canada the edge since their entire country is one giant solid block of ice. But I don't know, you do have exceptions. I love the guy live streaming his praying. Yeah, you got to do that. Can you imagine? I mean, seriously, the stuff I'm talking. I mean, I'm over there on the side, and I'm quoting what Jesus said about doing your prayers to be seen by others and stuff. And it's not just, hey, we're in the middle of Times Square. Look at us, everyone walking by. Look at us, look at us, look at us. It's, oh, and we got to record it so everyone around can see me. Oh, look what I'm doing now. Look what I'm doing. It's like, guys, if you want to do that, it's up to you. Just quit saying you respect Jesus. Stop it. Everything Jesus says, you do the exact opposite. And then, yep, Jesus on our side. Yep, we're the true followers of Jesus. It's insane and idiotic. We have but here. Was that a shout out to the Warner? You guys won't believe how me and 29 of my friends celebrated Ramadan. World may never know. How often do you have to explain the difference between the inspired word of God and the eternal word of God theologically to da'wah? I don't know. What do you mean? That would normally come up in sort of different contexts. The only thing that comes to mind when hearing Piers Morgan during the interview is the meme of Henry VIII screaming, "Are you?" Awesome surprise to see you in New York. God bless. Yep. Good times, good times. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to check out Piers Morgan here, talking to Gad Saad. Let's see what they got.
Well, joining me now is Dr. Gad Saad. He's a scholar at the Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of American Freedom at the University of Mississippi and the author of forthcoming book, Suicidal Empathy. Gad, great to have you back on Uncensored.
Thank you so much for having me, Piers.
Look, this is obviously, as we've just heard, a very emotive issue. It's a complex issue. It's a multifaceted issue. You know, there's no doubt there is an interesting comparison to be made about sheer volumes, for example, of Muslims in the UK and US. It's about the same number, around 4 to 5 million, but the US is 6-7 times as big as the UK. So clearly we have a lot more Muslims in the UK. We have a tiny fraction of America's Jewish population. I think America has 7-8 million, I think it is. In America, we have about 250,000. So they're right there, just statistically, we have a very different setup in terms of Muslim and Jewish populations of our respective countries. But in terms of this whole debate, fueled a lot by people on the conservative right in America.
Say real quick, that's significant because I remember one time recently, it was a football, game or soccer, like we would say that the correct way. And I think it was in Birmingham, and the Israeli team was I forget what the end ruling was, but at first they ruled that they couldn't come because of safety things. Like, so he's pointing out that like they don't have as many Jews in the UK, and that's evident because if the Muslims got their way and like they wanted to do in this soccer event, they were basically going to harass and attack the Israeli, football team that was playing. And I can't remember the exact official ruling if they ended up getting more security or not, and they allowed the Israelis to come. But that's a significant point there because if there was a larger Jewish population in the UK, I wonder if we would see more of that.
And historically, what I see from Pierce Morgan in every one of these conversations, and I'm 99.9% sure this is going to be all through this. He just looks at any given moment. He can't follow. He's incapable of following a trajectory. He's incapable of following a trajectory of here's where we were 20 years ago. Here's where we are now. Look where things are heading. Look where things are 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and so on. He's just incapable of doing that. I'm in here, all right here. I don't see a problem because, you got this, but then you got this, and so it's okay. It's not all that bad. It's fine. And it's like, oh, are you stupid? Are you freaking stupid? Can you not see can you not see where this is going? But yeah, he's chronically like that. And it's, yeah. So yeah, if you think you got some problems now with Muslims and Jews, guess what? The Jewish population in the UK is not growing. Muslim population growing rapidly. Do the freaking math, Piers. Yeah, so let's see.
Britain has been invaded by radical Muslims. Megyn Kelly used that phrase last week with me. And we've lost control to radical Muslims. I just see no evidence that is remotely true. That's not to say...
Hey, Piers, quick question. Do you live in one of these cities? Do you live in one of these cities where you have these very large Muslim populations, or do you live in a super wealthy white area without any Muslims around you? No, but let me correct that. If there is a Muslim around you, he's like a professor at Oxford University or something like that. Which one of those do you live in? In other words, where exactly are you to be speaking accurately on the situation? Because we hear a lot of people complaining about how screwed up things are right now. We hear a lot of it. And if you totally missed all the grooming gang stuff, that's what life is like for people who are in these areas where you're not. And you're sitting here, I mean, borderline literally from an ivory tower, looking around going, oh, it's so beautiful up here. We're just in this ivory tower. I don't see what the problem is. Hang on. Things are going bad. I'm looking around. There's nothing wrong up here.
Yeah.
Gosh, completely incompetent, man.
Yeah, I remember him when he had some American guests on. He made the point that he has like a home in Beverly Hills. So he lives in like the equivalent of Beverly Hills in the UK as well. So he doesn't see these things. I'm sure like the only Muslims he's exposed to are like his private like limousine drivers or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And it's a serious problem, not just for Pierce, but it's the same thing with the politicians. You have a bunch of wealthy politicians who live in very nice areas. They're not being overrun, and these are the people who make the decisions, but they cater to the Muslims because they want the Muslim votes. But they're not the ones who have to deal with the problem. So the problem doesn't affect them. Muslims are just a source of votes. So they'll do whatever the Muslims want, and it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect them. And so they don't care. They don't care how much it's ruining everyone else's lives.
Yeah, they don't care about the illegal immigration or anything like that because they're not moving into their neighborhoods, like you said.
Yep. So Pierce is one of the elites, not the commoners who suffer the consequences of the decisions of the elites in the UK.
I don't think there have been big issues with the huge influx of immigrants to the UK in the last 25 years. That is indisputable. It's gone way too.
I would just like one grooming gang survivor after another to sit down with him and listen to I don't see any real problem. I don't see any bad thing. I don't see any bad consequences of this. Just say it to their faces, Pierce, and watch their reactions.
It's like Tucker Carlson. We should probably do a show on that too. I mean, you guys have done plenty in the past, but his recent thing where he's like, "Is saying Islam was evil? Is that just like a political agenda that people are trying to put?" Or he's in Israel doing these interviews and stuff like that, and he's saying how Islam is it's not really evil. I mean, he's basically saying what he said before, but he's just like doubling down on some of his stupidities, and that kind of reminds me of Pierce.
we lost control of our general immigration policy. But that doesn't mean we've lost control of the country to radical Muslims, in my estimation.
Look, if you take any disease, say diabetes, when you're first diagnosed with it, we're not going to amputate your leg tomorrow, but we know that there is a trajectory whereby we can.
Trajectory, right. That's what Piers never sees. And yeah, he also straw mans. He said, they're saying we've been overrun, but look around. We're not under Sharia, we're not overrun. Like, what do people mean when they're saying that? There are certain areas that are being overrun, and that's increasing. So do the math, follow where things are pointing. You need to be taking steps right now to deal with the problems in the future instead of just going, I don't see a problem, I don't see a problem, I don't see a problem. And again, he is incapable. Watch, Gad Saad will break it down. It's the trajectory, you moron. And then what? No, well, I have Muslim friends. They're not trying to subjugate me at all. What's wrong with you? Hang on. Let's see.
Predict that within a certain time period, things will go wrong if you don't resolve your insulin issues.
Let me back up just so we get this trajectory point in from Gad.
Look, if you take any disease, say diabetes, when you're first diagnosed with it, we're not going to amputate your leg tomorrow.
Oh, so you're saying Islam is a disease? How dare you? How dare you say Islam is a disease? What, you're saying Muslims are a cancer? What's wrong with you?
But we know that there is a trajectory whereby we can predict that within a certain time period, things will go wrong if you don't resolve your insulin issues, right? So it is absolutely true, you're right, that today, Britain remains a non-Muslim country. But if we continue along the same patterns, will it improve or will it worsen if the current immigration policies remain the same? And let me draw an analogy. There are currently 56 countries that are part of the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Each of those countries, once upon a time, started with 0 Muslims. Then you close your eyes and you open your eyes, and in many of those countries, you have 0% non-Muslims. So for example, Egypt used to be a largely Coptic country, Coptic Christian. Today, it's 10% Copts. My own country, within my own lifetime, used to be majority Christian country. Today, it's majority Muslim country. So it's not as though everywhere that Islam goes, they just engage in an orgiastic killing of everybody. But in one way or another, once Islam enters, the goal is for you to Islamize the society. And it doesn't take a fancy professor to understand those historical patterns.
Yeah, right. Piers, any idiot with a drop of common sense can understand this, but you can't. And the rest of your fellow journalists can't. And your politicians can't. And you just had a simple point. Gad said, we're not saying it's already under control. We're saying follow the trajectory. If you don't do something now, same thing I was saying. Why? Because Gad, Saad, and I both have that small degree of common sense that's so lacking. Watch Piers not understand anything.
Yeah. But so one of his points, though, it's like, yeah, the UK is not, a Muslim country, but there are definitely parts of the UK that are, where there's Muslim majorities that it seems like it's a Muslim country. And we saw, I think it was recently, we showed, I think it was on your stream. I can't remember. Just give me 1 second. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I think it was recently. I was on your stream. We were doing a review of the documentary with PBD, and we talked about how, like, there are different, like, courts that rule. They advise you not to go to, like, the government for, like, wife beating or something like that, but go to the Sharia courts.
Pretty creepy stuff. But let's check out Piers says, hang on, I have Muslim friends, and how dare you say something like this?
I mean, it's interesting what you say. I would argue back at that the vast majority of Muslims I know in the UK are very happy to be part of a multicultural Britain in which they assimilate quite happily with their neighbours of all types, of all creeds and races and religions and so on. I just don't see this hotbed of radicalism. Now, I would caveat that by saying that most of the terrorism in the UK in this century, for example, has been perpetrated by radical Islamists. That is indisputable. But it's been sporadic. And I think that's important to stress. It's not something that's happening like it was with the IRA, for example, in the 70s and 80s on a regular basis. It's happening sporadically. So there are in an influx of some radical Islamists who.
Notice the only one who's qualifying as radical Islamists are the actual terrorists who carry out attacks. Piers, let me break this down for you. As far as Islam is concerned, right now in the UK is not terror time. It's not. You'll have people who do it. You'll have people who want to, guarantee their place in paradise and so on, who want to weaken the system and so on. Overall, the message of knowledgeable Muslims on what Muslims in the UK should be doing is keep having babies, keep expanding. You're not fighting now. You're preparing. You are preparing for the future. Piers, I can show you endless Muslim scholars telling people that right now. Now is not the time for fighting. Now is the time for preparing to fight in the future. And just think about that. When Islamic State said, hey, we're the new caliphate, come join us, what happened? All these people started flooding from the UK, from France, from Germany, and so on, going down to join them. None of these people would have been, these teenage girls and so on who are running down there to join it. Piers wouldn't have thought any of them are radical. Piers, if they went to join ISIS, guess what? They were your definition of radical. They weren't doing anything yet. Why? They're waiting for orders. They're waiting for orders. He thinks like you're either running around slaughtering people, in which case you're radical, or you're peaceful and well integrated. And he doesn't have a concept of there are people who have the radical ideas, but they understand their job right now is waiting until there's a call for something for them to do. And any idiot can figure this out. It's not complicated. You could explain it to that man 100,000 times. He will never, ever, ever understand it. He has some psychological blocker up that keeps him from understanding the simplest of points.
Yeah, he also denies it too, like when it happens. I remember there was the case when actually Andrew Tate actually correctly called it out. He was wrong on some of the other details, but it was the instance where the girls were stabbed to death. You remember that? And they didn't know, or they didn't announce he was a Muslim for like a long time. It wasn't until like they announced, oh, we found like an Al Qaeda manual in his room or something like that, where the media finally admitted he was a Muslim. But Piers Morgan had like Andrew Tate on the show, and he was basically saying like, there's no, he was basically going so hard against him that this guy wasn't a Muslim. And now that it came out that he was a Muslim, I don't think he ever retracted that. So it's not only that he's like unaware that there are these like sleepers or whatever you want to call them, but it's like when these things do happen, he'll deny it, and then when it comes out, no, that was a Muslim, he doesn't retract.
Perpetrate bad things. That's indisputable. But that doesn't mean we're a country under the control of radical Islam.
And that's the other thing he does, straw man. If you say, hey, you got a problem in the UK, look what's going on. Oh, you're saying we're officially under the control of radical Islam, but we're not. Oh my goodness, look, we're not. I'm not. We're not. We had the same thing in Dearborn, right? Where police would arrest Christians for talking to Muslims, throw them in jail. And then they'd say, oh, you were disturbing the peace or something like that by having this discussion. And we say, that's Sharia. That's Sharia. You are actually enforcing Sharia. And then what was the response? What? You're saying the government is officially Sharia in Dearborn? No, we're not saying that, you idiot. We're saying you got people who are where you can see them implementing things that are not part of our system. They're part of a different system. And that should be a sign to you that they ultimately want this other system in place. They're showing you. So if they're able to implement it this much here, and they want it fully implemented, that's what they're aiming at. How are you not getting this? Oh, no, hang on. You're saying we're fully under the control and that we don't do caliphate. No one's saying that, you giant moron. Straw man, everything. Straw man.
Yeah, so I think I might have mentioned this stat last time, but let me mention it again, and then I'll draw another analogy too in pathology and pathogen studies.
Gad's funny because he knows he's talking. He knows when he's talking to people who've been told something over and over again and they don't get it, that he needs to try and break it down in other ways. So he'll go with analogies, hoping analogies can be more easily understood by people who refuse to get a point.
There have been, this is a lower estimate. There are other databases that place what I'm about to say at a much higher number. Since 9/11 alone, there have been nearly 48,000 Islamic terror attacks in nearly 70 countries, right? 48,000. If you take all of the other 10,000 religions combined, it doesn't add up to the number of fingers that I have on my two fingers. So the fact that you and I could fully agree that there are millions of Muslims who don't do this doesn't negate the fact that if you allow Islam to take a foothold in a place, we know what the outcome will be. So now I'm going to draw the analogy that I promised earlier. The shingles virus is something that you and I, given that we're roughly the same age, is something.
Oh, now you're comparing Muslims to a virus. How dare you? You're saying Muslims are like the shingles virus. How dare you?
That we should be concerned about. It lays dormant in you for 20, 30, 40 years. And then there is a catalyst that then can trigger the shingles virus, and it results in a very uncomfortable situation for you.
Yeah, guys. Yeah, that's part of my prison story as far as my testimony goes. So shingles, it's basically you get chicken pox when you're young and your body knows how to fight chicken pox. But the chicken pox is still always in you. Your body just knows how to fight it. Then if something happens, there's some extreme stressor or something like that, or you get a huge vitamin deficiency that weakens your immune system, all of a sudden chickenpox virus activates again in your body, and you just get this rash all over the place, and it's itching like crazy. It feels like poison ivy and so on. So in other words, you always got, that's actually a good analogy. It's in you. It's waiting. It's just waiting for your system to weaken a little bit until it springs out and gets really, really painful to deal with.
Even though it lay dormant in you for 40 years. So when Islam is only 1% of the population, or 2 or 3, they don't yet have the numbers to be able to do the things that would otherwise worry you. But once they become 20%, 30%, 40%, then we can exactly predict the trajectory as we would diabetes. So again, you have to have the imagination to extrapolate into the future.
He's actually... That's the exact same thing I was saying. He lacks the ability to think like 5, 10 years in the future. And okay, just you have to be able to just figure out where things are heading, Piers. It's not that complicated. Piers won't get it though.
And then hopefully, inshallah, the light will come.
Inshallah.
Right, but there'll be lots of people who hear you, compare Islam to a disease.
Dude, you called it. You called it. Oh my. And then you know what else? You know what else he's gonna probably say too? He's gonna be like, "Oh, I know a lot of Muslim doctors who treat these diseases."
Like some people would have a problem with you calling Islam a disease and calling Muslims a disease. No, Piers, that's not the point. That's not the point of an analogy. The analogy is I'm trying to explain something. See, you seem to lack the ability to understand this over here. So I'm trying to come up with an example of something that you can understand so that you can absorb the principle of something being like the shingles virus or something like that, of it lying dormant. Something can lie dormant. It doesn't mean it's not dangerous. It means it's dormant and it hasn't been activated yet, but something later on, once something has changed, this can be activated. That's the point. No, you said disease. You're calling Muslims a disease. How dare you?
You called it, dude. You called it.
And that incredibly offensive. And there'll be many millions of Muslims in the UK, because statistically, the absolutely vast majority of Muslims in the UK do not commit radical acts of terrorism. So
listen to his standard again. How do you know someone is radical? They're committing radical acts of terrorism. Piers, look at the statistics on how many Muslims in the UK want Sharia. eventually. How many Muslims in the UK support the death penalty for apostasy? They're not going out and killing apostates. They're not doing it. Well, they're not radical. They're not going around killing apostates. They want to keep building and becoming stronger until they can kill apostates. Are they radical or not? No, they're not killing people. There's no problem. Either you're out killing people, in which you're a problem, or you're not doing that, in which case you're no problem, and you're right. The ideas in your head don't matter even slightly to me because I'm a moron. See what he says.
9% at least are living in peaceful harmony and not engaging in this. And in fact, a tiny fraction of British Pakistani Muslim men, for example, were engaged in the grooming gangs.
He said tiny percentage in some of these cities it was 1 in 8.
Yeah.
1 in 8. In other words, count them out. You see 8 Pakistanis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's raping 12-year-old girls, drugging them, pimping them, and so on. Count out another 8. One of those guys is doing it. And what's that mean? It's been pointed out. If 1 out of every 8 is doing it, then that means everyone knows about it. Everyone knows about it. Everyone knows if they see 1 out of 8 of these guys taking these 12-year-old girls and stuff to upstairs in their kebab shop, people know this is going on. And guess what?
Yeah.
People didn't have a problem with it. You actually had even some of the guys who went to prison and so on, they're interviewing their wives and so on. How has this impacted you? Tell us that. What? Who cares? They were dirty girls. They're dirty girls. They didn't care either. No one cared. Keep in mind. Okay, guys, do the math here. If 1 out of every 8 Pakistani men were doing this stuff with the grooming gangs, and everyone else knew it, their wives aren't stopping them. People aren't stopping them. People aren't. You didn't have the other 7 out of 8 going, we have to stop this. Oh my God. They did not care. Why? They're dirty kuffar girls. Who cares? So I'm not doing it, but they are, and I don't care what they're doing because these girls aren't important. But but it's a minority. It's a minority, so it doesn't matter. I don't know how stupid this guy can possibly be.
Albeit their behavior was disgusting and reprehensible, and the cover-up was just as bad. So my point being that, as I read out earlier to the panel, the vast majority of sex attacks in the UK are still perpetrated by white men, for example, right? So, statistics can be twisted any way people want, but this categorization of Islam as a disease in a country like the UK, I just don't sense that.
Hang on. I just don't sense that. Islam is a disease. You can see Gad's face. He's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe he doesn't get this, and I have to explain it to him like a 4-year-old.
Sex attacks in the UK.
Look at him. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What am I dealing with here?
Are still perpetrated by white men, for example, right? So, statistics can be twisted.
Look at him. He's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. I would fail this guy if he were in one of my classes. He's so stupid.
Any way people want, but this categorization of Islam as a disease.
Gad Saad's going to have to explain to him how analogies work and how he's completely missing the point.
In a country like the UK, I just don't sense that.
Look at him.
Of course, by the way, I don't know if you're doing this willfully or not. I'm not categorizing Islam as a disease. I'm drawing an analogy. The definition of an analogy is to draw exactly.
Okay, here's what an analogy is, Piers.
Exactly a comparative mechanism of how things might proliferate. So I'm not saying Islam.
Yeah, but you were direct. Hang on, Gad. Let's not be disingenuous. You were directly comparing it to the impact.
I was making an analogy, Piers. Man, hang on. No, you were calling it a disease. Why do you apologize to all Muslims for calling all Muslims a disease? You're saying they're all radical and that we're under Sharia.
Having a disease that spreads.
No, what I'm saying is that the phenomenon, whatever it may be, may lie dormant until there is a tipping point that serves as a catalyst. So if you
he looks and sees what you're saying about Islam in the UK, and you're saying, well, it's not right now, it's not there, and therefore it's no danger at all. So what's Pierce's problem, as Gad Saad would see it? He doesn't understand the concept, the idea of something that's not completely destroying you now, possibly lying dormant, but that could be a huge problem 5 or 10 years from now. So, since he doesn't understand the concept, I'll give him an analogy of something he can understand as far as something lying dormant, but that is going to lead to a huge problem down the road. And the easiest kinds of examples along these lines are diseases. So I'll explain it to you in terms of a disease so that you can understand it, because you don't understand it. And then once you understand it, once you get the point, oh, something can be like dormant. It's not hurting me right now, but that doesn't mean it's not a danger and it can hurt me in the future. Okay, I get it. So you're saying Islam is like that. No, you're saying it's a disease. You're saying it's a disease. How dare you? Don't be disingenuous. So you can't even explain something to this guy.
Don't like me comparing it to Islam. If we were to have millions and millions of Orthodox Jews that come into an area, there will be a number when the likelihood of teaching evolution in the schools where there are tons of Orthodox Jews would reduce, because they don't believe in the theory of evolution. So in this case, I'm not arguing that Jews are a disease. I'm drawing an analogy. But let me come back to the point of, but most Muslims are lovely. Most men do not commit rape. We can agree on that. And certainly the statistics would be no different than saying most Muslims don't commit terrorism. But if you and I have a daughter, and that daughter is about to cross a dark alley where there are a few men that are loitering, would we tell her, sweetie, statistically, most men are not going to be rapists. So even though you're wearing that really alluring miniskirt, don't worry about it, because it's only a very small number that will commit rape, right? We wouldn't say that to them. Or let me give you another analogy. You and I have had young children.
The analogy I would use, but Gad, hang on.
Watch, he's not going to understand the point, because he never does. So
he's going to say something about like victim blaming. What is it going to do with the skirt that she's wearing? So you're saying that she deserves to be, assaulted because of her clothes, or?
Yeah, Gad Saad is making a simple point. Just because you say minority does not mean not a danger, right? Most men, we're not going to grape your daughter if she's walking around. You still want her to be on guard, because even if it's a minority, even if it's 1 or 2%, you got to be on your guard against even 1 or 2%. You do. So don't think that just imagine. So apparently according to Piers, if I said, hey, there's a population over there, and 10% of them want to just completely murder. Keep an eye. I'm not saying Muslims. I don't even know the statistics here on the immigrants right now, as far as like official statistics and so on. Suppose you had a group of some people, and 10% of them wanted to murder you and grape all the women in your family. Okay. Well, they're a small minority, so it's not a problem, right? I still think that would be a pretty darn huge problem. For if you're every 10 people you're bringing in someone who wants to kill you and grape your wife and daughter. Wouldn't that be a problem? No, it's a minority. It's not a problem. So here, Gad is responding to the idea, just because something's a minority doesn't mean you don't take precautions over it. Can you at least think from the perspective of your daughter? If she's walking down an alley and you don't know if the guy there is one of the minority or not. You don't know. So just be on your guard. Be careful. Be safe, right? No, he will not grant that, because he's completely oblivious to understanding any point ever. Let's see how he misunderstands it.
Again, sure. My response to that would be that, statistically, 83% chance that you'll be attacked by a white man, right? So if
what? How does that go against what God is? How does that go against his analogy, though?
It doesn't at all. He wasn't saying anything about Muslims, anything about race. It's an analogy again. No race. He's just, the percentage of men who will grape women is small. We don't think that means it's not a problem. It can still be a problem even if it's minority. So he's like, can you at least, Piers, get your mind around the idea that even a minority that does something really bad is a problem, and that you should be on guard against it? Can you at least grant that? And he can't even do it. He has to miss the point. He has to misunderstand every point. And it's like, what are people doing? Watch.
You want to get into numbers and probability. Yes, I have a daughter. I would not want my daughter to walk across a park late at night. But actually,
so you get the actual point he was making. Piers, how dare you say that you would not want your daughter walking out where a possible grapist could do something to her? How dare you say that when grapists are such a small percentage of the population? That He just got it without realizing he got it. That was the only thing Gad was trying to point out to him. Piers,
Yeah.
even you, with all your stupid, idiotic ideas, even you can understand that a minority can still pose a danger, and therefore you need to be aware of it, because that's what he was objecting about. It was just, what's a minority? It's a minority. If it's a minority, then it's not a problem. If it's a minority of the population that want to do this stuff, then it's not a problem. It's not a problem. Wait, I'll show you by an analogy that you understand that a minority can be a problem. What's your response? Well, completely misunderstand the point and take it in a different direction because I'm a moron.
Statistically, she's far more likely to be attacked by a white man. That is just a reality in the UK. That's why.
Right.
Well, that's the statistical reality. So the framing of this debate, when people try and say, well, look, you've been invaded and overrun by radical Muslims. They all hate women. Therefore, it's become a very dangerous place for women because of radical Muslims. I simply throw back statistics, which is 83% of serious crime in the UK remains perpetrated today by white men.
Piers, 96% of Scotland is white. Therefore, obviously, most of the rapes that are committed in Scotland are going to be committed by white men. It's this little thing called per capita adjustment, right? I want to draw another analogy for you because you didn't like the rape one.
Gad's just going to keep throwing analogies at him until he finally gets one. Guys, but do you notice? It's, I don't get this. Okay, let me give an analogy. Well, let me misunderstand your analogy. Okay, you didn't understand that. Let me give you another analogy. Well, I won't understand that one either. Okay, I'll try to explain, but let me give you another. But I don't understand that one. Like he's literally incapable of understanding any point that he disagrees with.
When you and I were raising our children and had to look for a babysitter, did we typically go and look for 35-year-old men as babysitters, or did we look for a 15-year-old teenage girl? Because we recognize that statistically speaking, 15-year-old girls are much less likely to molest children than 35-year-old men. Now, that doesn't take away from the fact that it is exactly true that most 35-year-old men will never molest. But life is about navigating statistical regularities. The one who understands those regularities comes out on the other side without being raped. The one who lives in unicornia will wake up one day while he's being put down on the floor being gang raped. So statistics matter. Most Muslims are perfectly lovely. Islam is not necessarily congruent with Western values. Those two statements are perfectly consistent with each other.
All right. So there, another, I'm seriously hoping that Piers will eventually understand an analogy. So Gad is just making the same point in different ways. When we decide, if I decide who's going to watch my toddler daughter, I can get a teenage girl or a 35-year-old man. Let's suppose they're both volunteering as babysitters for my toddler girl. Well, guess what? Vast majority of 35-year-old men are not going to molest the little girl. But you can understand probably a somewhat higher percentage of 35-year-old men who are volunteering to watch a toddler girl are more capable of doing that than a teenage girl, than the statistics of teenage girls. And so you say, okay, this group, small percentage, small chance of doing anything, but this group, even way smaller chance of doing anything. Well, I'm going with that one. Even though it's a tiny minority over here, I don't even want the tiny minority. I don't want to possibly get someone from that tiny minority of 35-year-old men who want to harm my girl. Therefore, I don't want those guys. I don't want those guys. I would choose someone who's significantly less likely to do that. Okay, what would the point be there? All right, even though you have fewer Muslims and so on, if you have a bigger percentage of them who want to do some dangerous stuff, can't you understand that there is some underlying danger there just because it's a higher percentage who, let's say, want to kill apostates? Can you acknowledge if even most don't want to kill apostates, if it's a higher percentage who want to kill apostates or something like it, can that be an issue? Let's see if Piers understands anything.
Well, except I would come back to this. Statistically, there are, I think, nearly 5 million Muslims living in the UK, a population of 67 million. And there was an absurd response last week because Megyn Kelly, after our interview blew up, posted to me on X that the most popular boy's name in the country last year was Muhammad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now he's talking about the names, right?
Yeah. So he's probably going to say something like the vast majority of Muhammad's. I don't know what he's going to say. Something stupid.
I'm just wondering why he started talking about that. Why? Just Pierce, give him a sign that you understand the point that he's repeatedly trying to make with analogy after analogy after analogy. Saying, what, you know, the name Muhammad, blah, blah. Let's see.
And this was immediately seized on as evidence we've been overrun by radical Muslims. Well, having the name Muhammad does not make you a radical Muslim. One.
Right.
Secondly, it is very,
I thought it was
very,
gonna say it doesn't make
as
him a
everybody
Muslim.
knows who's got half a brain, it is very common for Muslim men to include the name Muhammad in the name of their sons, right? It's a very common thing. It's not as common for white guys like me to choose the same name for all our sons, right? So Noah was the second most popular, which is a popular Jewish name, for example. People, it happens to be in vogue. I think it's the most popular name in the US at the moment is Noah. It wouldn't be most popular in the UK because of Jews, because there are so few Jews. However, it's not surprising to me that Muhammad tops the list of boys' names simply because so many Muslim families like to call their sons Muhammad, right? So these statistics get seized on and twisted to create a false narrative that because the most popular boy's name in the country is Muhammad, even though the numbers are pretty low, that means we're being overrun by radical Muslims. I just find that a ludicrous, ridiculous journey to go on intellectually.
Jack, did you see any connection between what
No.
Gad
I was trying to.
said and Pierce's response? It's like Pierce he just came in here and he's mad about something from, who was he saying he did an interview with?
Megyn Kelly.
Megyn Kelly. So he did an interview with Megyn Kelly and certain points are being used. And it seems like he just came in here wanting to discuss certain points and he's just not paying attention or not getting anything Gad said. But here's what I wanted to talk about. So Gad said, here, let me explain to you in another way why something that is a minority can potentially be a problem. Well, hang on. What about the names? Like it got brought up that, the biggest baby name is Muhammad in the UK. And people are saying, therefore, we're under Sharia and it's too late. And we're all under Islamic law. But that's not true. That's not true. Who in the blue hell are you talking to, dude? If you're trying to talk to people on Twitter, then go talk to them. You're talking to a very intelligent person right here who's trying to get you to understand the simplest of points about why your stupidity is endangering the future generations who are going to suffer the consequences of all the terrible ideas of you guys in the present. You guys are all making decisions right now and saying things that you might not have to suffer for, but that the next generation is going to suffer for horribly. He's trying to get you to understand the simplest of points, and you just can't do it. You are incapable. Retire,
And
Piers.
also-
Either learn to understand a simple point, or you're in the wrong business, dude.
I also think that he's qualifying it as radical Muslim because you can actually make the point without saying radical. Like you could say that that's an argument to make that there is like a Muslim takeover of the UK. But like you said, that's not Gad's point. He never made that point. It's like when Jake had Chris's Speaker's Corner, he was arguing with you and with Avery with Chris. It's like, wait, you have somebody else here. Like respond to what they're saying.
Yep.
And that's what, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's similar. Here's what I want to talk about, but you're talking to this guy right now. Well, yeah, but what I want to talk about is this. Yeah, but why are you over here? You could be talking about that somewhere else. Why you're addressing a person right? Yeah, but I want to talk. This is what I want to talk about. Great job, Piers. Let's take a couple super chats to cleanse my brain of this. We've gone through most of it already, though. So yeah, it looks like all these interviews are just going to be people trying to get a person who can't understand anything to understand something. Pretty difficult. But Daisung here pointed out, Gad is pretty funny on X. No, Gad is hilarious, guys. Gad is hilarious. Gad could have been a comedian. That's why, if they've never done it, I'd like to see Gad said, have a discussion with Bassam Youssef, because they're both really funny. They're both really funny guys. I think that would be a funny discussion if they haven't done it already. If they have, someone send it to me because I'd like to check that out. But this has to be frustrating. This has to be frustrating trying to get this guy to understand anything. Hats off to Gad Saad for trying. But guess what, Gad said? Everyone who's watching who isn't as brainwashed as Pierce is understanding you loud and clear. The only thing that comes to mind when hearing Piers Morgan during the interview is the meme of Henry VIII screaming, "Oh, you already read that." Hang on. Awesome. I already read that too. But yeah. Them boys doing some of that whack-ass fasting. Listening to Pierce makes me need a drink. Yeah, it goes for all of us. Pierce is a secret Muslim, you see, cracked the code. I guess that would make sense. In December, we saw some Muslims destroying Christmas trees, doubting we will see any Christians setting fire to buffet tables during Ramadan.
Buffet tables.
Let the third crusade begin. Guys, you could crush Islam just by learning the basics and sharing what you learn. That should be the new crusade. Does Jai know the case that got Pierce versus Tommy? I don't know what you mean.
Pierce?
The case that got Pierce versus Tommy. What do you mean? I don't understand the sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know what you mean. Is it wrong to say that the peaceful Muslims are the radicalists, since the Quran and the Hadith teach the extreme views? The point is, you can be what we consider radical in various ways, and if you just say this is the only meaning of radical, well, if you have people who aren't out there waging terror, if Pierce thinks no, only the people who are actively waging terrorist attacks are radical, and you have a bunch of people who are waiting to do it when the call comes down, or people who just want to implement Sharia, or people who want to execute apostates, or people who want to do all these things, or even the grooming gangs, where in certain cities, 1 out of 8 people, Pakistani men who are doing all this, and the others aren't complaining and aren't stopping it. That looks like you have a big ocean of really, really dangerous, extreme ideas. And nope, not according to Pierce. It's all working out swimmingly. He doesn't have to deal with it where he is. Have you heard the things Sarah Adams has said on Sean Ryan? The attacks that may come. No one seems much concerned in the U.S., in my opinion. Nope, not familiar with that.
Haven't heard it either.
Can Pierce please say Islam is a false religion and Muhammad is a false prophet? No way. By now, I'm convinced he secretly converted to Islam. I don't think that, because he sounds just like everyone we've been hearing for years. It's just like some people kind of grew out of that over time, and he sounds like exactly like a guy from 2005.
Yeah,
he sounds just as stupid as the Dawa guys. Yeah, he does. What's an analogy? Sheikh Morgan, 2026. Yeah, we have Sheikh Uthman. What's a debate? We have Pierce. What's an analogy? Analogy. I enjoy eating nickels, but some are poisoned. Reality. Cops say cover up jewels while on street. Yeah, they understand. Pierce, have you heard of this thing called per capita? Yeah. Gad broke that down for him. Not all great kuffar women, but there's enough of them it becomes a problem to your population. What did 1400-year Islam give to the West? Only problems. Yeah, lots of problems.
Yeah, apparently, like one Jew can say that Ezra is the son of Allah, and then it's attributed to all Jews.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's the same with the other stuff. Like the people, how dare you? You're just saying it's just a tiny minority and stuff. I mean, yeah. In Islam, one person could say something, you just blanket statement, go after all these people. And even the people say, oh, no, when it says fight those who do not believe, it's only talking about certain people. Oh, so just certain people can be doing something, but the command can just come down, fight those who do not believe. Interesting.
Exactly.
Man, late again, but I hope you're well. Oh, we're well, all right. 2020, 39, 40,000 on terror watch list are Muslims. How do you know who's on that list, Pierce? Statistically, you are more likely to approach a white man. Statistically, that white man is less likely to assault you. No, this all sounds very racist. Surah Al-Baqarah 265-66, Surah Al-Araf 7166, Surah Al-Ma'idah 560. These verses completely crush Jake's with authority arguments. I bring him up. He deleted my live comments. I don't believe he would ever do that. No. What's radical in Islam? Being a genuinely good person. That seems to go against Islam the most. Here, anti-terrorist units always work around mosques. Yeah, it's like they understand that there's more likely to be a problem over there. Apparently, they didn't get the memo from Pierce. This is the proof. Pierce is demonstrating the miracle of reinterpretation, such a true power of Islam. Not even really reinterpretation. It's just the miracle of selective stupidity. I'll decide when to be extremely stupid and not be able to understand a point, because the point would actually go against what I've been saying. It's only terrorism. Lighten up. It's not affecting me. I'm rich. Ha 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 ha. All right. Back to Gad Saad. Trying to help someone who can't understand the simplest of points understand something ever.
Because it makes no sense to me.
Can I take another shot at,
I'll try again.
navigating through statistics? Okay, if I told you today that there is millions of guys named Moshe that are moving into Brighton, would that increase or decrease the likelihood of there being a greater preponderance of kosher places? All other things equal, you would argue there'd be an increase, because since we have brains that engage in causal reasoning, I would say,
well, most of us. And some of us don't have a brain that engages in causal reasoning. So, guys, the point here was after Gad gave him a very simple point, Piers started talking about, what about the names? What about people flipping out about the name Muhammad? And the number one baby name is Muhammad, but that's just because Muslims name, so many of them name their babies Muhammad. That doesn't mean there's any problems here. And now he's pointing out, okay, Piers, suppose you had tons of people, suppose a characteristically Jewish baby name became the number one name. Is that just telling you something about the names, or could that lead you to expect certain things are going to happen? So, for instance, if all of a sudden you found out that there are tons more Jewish babies being born or something like that, don't you think that down the road that might lead to more kosher restaurants, let's say? In other words, can that be connected to something else in society? Could there be consequences of that sort of thing? And the point he's making is, Muslims just a lot of people who have naming their babies Muhammad. Okay, if tons of babies are being named Muhammad, could that lead to something down the road? Could that tell you where things are heading? Any of that? Is that even possible?
Since Moshe is a prototypical Jewish name, and since many Jews wish to adhere to kosher laws, I can undoubtedly, unequivocally, unassailably say that if there are more Moshes in Brighton, there's more likely to be pressure to have kosher food. But there'll be other Moshes that completely decide to eat a shrimp soup, right? So I am Jewish.
So that would have been Pierce's response, right? So, so here's, if all of a sudden you have a Jewish baby named Moshe starts becoming like the dominant name in the UK, the top baby name, could that tell you something about whether this is going to lead to more kosher shops and restaurants? Well, no, that's not, because I know Moshe, and he's not even kosher. He's not even kosher, so no, it's not. He's completely incapable of understanding like the significance of statistics here. He probably won't understand it, but let's see here.
So I am Jewish. I'm very much steeped in my Jewish heritage. And yet...
So that's funny. Now Gad is actually preempting it. He knows Piers is going to go back to, well, no, because, not all Jews follow kosher, and so just the name might not change things. Right. You can understand that even though there are lots of Jews who don't, a bunch of them do. Let's see.
Yep.
Jewish name, and since many Jews wish to adhere to kosher laws, I can undoubtedly, unequivocally, unassailably say that if there are more Moshes in Brighton, there's more likely to be pressure to have kosher food. But there'll be other Moshes that completely decide to eat a shrimp soup, right? So I am Jewish. I'm very much steeped in my Jewish heritage. and yet I eat bacon. It's not because I practice a more gentle form of Judaism. It's because I choose to ignore those parts that don't adhere to my daily lives. So most Muslims are lovely because they are innately lovely. They are nice Jews and mean Jews. We're talking about Islam. Is Islam consist of a set of codified doctrines that are consistent with the foundational Western values? If the answer to that, Piers, is yes, then we should quickly accelerate Islamic immigration because we're going to be enriched. If the answer is perhaps no, then maybe you need to put on your statistical reasoning hat.
Ouch. I want to go back through that again. So it's funny. Like Gad picks up on people's inability to catch certain things or stumbling blocks to their understanding the point, and then he comes up with more examples that are tailor-made for this person to understand it. Like Pierce had a problem with using disease as an example. So what happened? So he switched to other analogies, so you can't complain about comparing Islam to a disease or something. So then he's Jewish. He used Jews as an example. If all of a sudden tons of Jewish babies are being born, and then he even preempts Pierce's, but hang on, I know someone who doesn't do that, and therefore it's not an issue. He even preempts that. So yes, there will be people like me who I'm just not going to follow stuff that I don't want to follow. And he even pointed out, guess what? That doesn't mean it's not part of Judaism. It means I'm not following Judaism when I don't follow that. So I'm not, it's not, oh, Judaism has, half of Judaism is fine with eating pork, but the other half, the extremists, they think, no, Judaism has a problem with eating pork. I'm not following that. So if you see a Jew who's eating bacon, that doesn't mean it's a lighter form of Judaism. He's just not following that aspect of Judaism. All this is to get Pierce to understand the point that, yep, you can have Muslims who are not following what Islam calls for, but Islam does call for certain things. And he says, Pierce, if Islam is just this set of ideas that are perfectly consistent and line up perfectly well with Western values, and we're all on the same page, he even says we should be bringing in all kinds of Muslims. Why? Because their ideology lines up perfectly with our own. It will help us if we get more people who support our ideas and values. But if we find out that Islam is in conflict, then even if you have a bunch of Muslims who are happy to live according to ours and aren't following those things of Islam, doesn't mean it's not a problem if the ideology that will be followed by some percentage is completely at odds with ours. So Pierce, can you get that? Can you at least get that? Because I feel like a 5-year-old could get that, and you never seem to be able to catch it. What's Pierce going to do here? But I'm going to go.
He's not going to get it. He's not going to get it.
Back it up just so people can understand how easy that point is, and we'll see if Pierce gets it. But we don't have high hopes for that.
More gentle form of Judaism. It's because I not increase or decrease the likelihood of there being a greater preponderance of kosher places. All other things equal, you would argue there'd be an increase, because since we have brains that engage in causal reasoning, I would say, since Moshe is a prototypical Jewish name, and since many Jews wish to adhere to kosher laws, I can undoubtedly, unequivocally, unassailably say that if there are more Moshes in Brighton, there's more likely to be pressure to have kosher food. But there'll be other Moshes that completely decide to eat a shrimp soup, right? So I am Jewish. I'm very much steeped in my Jewish heritage, and yet I eat bacon. It's not because I practice a more gentle form of Judaism. It's because I choose to ignore those parts that don't adhere to my daily lives. So most Muslims are lovely because they are innately lovely. They are nice Jews and mean Jews. We're talking about Islam. Is Islam consist of a set of codified doctrines that are consistent with the foundational Western values? If the answer to that, Piers, is yes, then we should quickly accelerate Islamic immigration because we're going to be enriched. If the answer is perhaps no, then maybe you need to put on your statistical reasoning hat.
If it's even perhaps no, Piers, then maybe you need to be a bit careful what you're doing right now. Can you get you? Unless you can say definitively, nope, this is no problem, and it lines up perfectly, you need to be careful. Can you? This is what's so screwed up to me. The people who are all making the decisions aren't the ones that have to suffer for it. It's the next generation and their daughters and so on that have to suffer. And these guys are just so insanely stupid and dangerous with what they do, and they just don't care because it doesn't affect them or their families because they're rich.
Yep.
Well, my statistical reasoning hat says, how much interreligious warfare do we see on the streets of my country? Elon Musk, I know someone you know well.
Did you catch that? Everything Gad is doing, Piers, something that you don't see as a problem now can nevertheless be a huge problem down the road. And I'm trying to get you to understand that, and you just won't understand that. And he gives him a perfect analogy in terms of everything Piers has not gotten or has complained about along the way to distract him. He's like, okay, I'll come up with something completely different that fits everything that maybe you understand. And it's, no, I'm just saying right now, I mean, Elon Musk says everything's being overrun right now, and I just don't see it. I don't see people slaughtering each other out in the streets. So obviously we're all getting along and everything's fine. And what? We're talking about the future, you moron. But right now, okay, can you see something simmering that is a huge problem down the road, but not this huge problem right now? But it's a huge problem. You call it a huge problem in terms of what it's going to lead to. Can you acknowledge there's any problem? No, unless everyone's slaughtering each other right now, there cannot be anything dangerous. No dangerous idea anywhere circulating in society. And then Gad breaks it down, and what does Piers do? Well, no, I'm talking about right now, and let me complain about Elon Musk. It's again, he wanted to complain about Megyn Kelly and people who are addressing that. Now he wants to complain about Elon Musk. And Piers, why do you even have him here? You could have just put like a little screenshot, a screenshot of Gad Saad. You could put AI there. You could put anything there. If you're not interacting with anything he's saying, you just have what you want to say. Why didn't you do a monologue, dude? Just go live and say, I want to respond. Here's how you do it, Piers. You say, here's a tweet that I'd like to respond to. The tweet says this. Okay, here's my response to that. Also, in this video clip, a person said this. I'd like to respond to that. You don't get a guest on, ignore everything he's saying, and then talk about all this other stuff that you actually want to respond to. This is just terrible, man. I thought this was actually going to... I had higher hopes for this, Piers. Let's see where he goes with this. Hey, Elon Musk.
Reasoning hat says, how much interreligious warfare do we see on the streets of my country? Elon Musk, I know someone you know well, constantly fuels this sense of there's going to be an imminent civil war because of the Muslim problem. But I see a lot of Hindus over here. I see a lot of Muslims. I see a lot of Christians. I see all sorts of different people of different colors, creeds, religions, and so on. And I don't see warfare
They don't get
everywhere.
along.
I don't see civil war.
I don't see civil war with all these groups that we just brought in. It's no civil war right now. Therefore, there will never be. My goodness, you're an idiot, dude. This is like barely worth watching at this point. But there's only a couple minutes left, so.
He's also like ignoring Muhammad Hijab when he famously went against the Hindus, remember? And then
you would look at that and say, wait, we didn't have that at all a couple of decades ago. Now we have that. Guess what, Piers? That's what we're talking about, a trajectory. We didn't have this issue at all 20 years ago, Muslims going out and in the streets versus Hindus and stuff like that. But now we have it sometimes. Okay, so if you're starting to have these issues now, do you think that could be pointing toward, especially when you're bringing more of the different groups in, do you think that could be more of a problem down the road? No, it can't possibly be a problem because it's not happening right now. Nothing that's happening right now can possibly influence the future. There is nothing right now going on anywhere in society that could have an impact on what happens down the road. There's only the present. All that matters right now is the present. There's nothing that can tell you about the future. Freaking moron, man. And it's crazy because I know he's not a moron. That's what I mean. It's like, it's a psychological thing. They're programmed not to be able to see reality.
erupting everywhere. I don't recognize the kind of depiction of my country which Elon has. And he's a guy who's barely set foot in my country, right, as far as I'm aware, in the last few decades. So I don't know what he's basing it on, other than this is a narrative that's been fueled and picked up by a lot of people in America. And I say to Elon, Elon's not even American himself, right? He's an immigrant to the United States. There are 5 million Muslims in the US, most of whom live perfectly.
Look at poor Gad, man. This guy has not understood a single word.
It's like a waste of intelligence. It's
Can you imagine? And he's probably had this experience with students, which he's probably treating this guy Pierce like a student. Okay, sometimes I'll explain something to a student, and one of them won't get it, so I try to explain it differently, and maybe he doesn't get that. And then what happens if you just keep explaining it in every single possible way, and he still doesn't get it? It's like, oh my goodness, this person's actually just incapable of learning right now. And do I dedicate my time to this when there are other people who do understand?
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I guess the relevance of doing it is you're on Pierce's show, and even if Pierce doesn't understand anything, maybe his viewers will.
Happily and peacefully amongst the communities they live in. There's no Muslim problem in the US. There's a Muslim radical terrorist extremist problem of terrorists coming into the country or perpetrating acts of terrorism against Americans around the world. Yes. And that's why there's been fights against Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and other terror groups. But to somehow then say, well, then all 5 million Muslim Americans must be a danger to society.
Anyone say that?
No.
Anyone say every single Muslim is a danger to the United States of America?
Nope.
An imminent threat? Anyone? That's another problem, Pierce. When someone says, here's what I'm saying, and you straw man. Here's what I'm saying. Straw man. Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying. Straw man. You don't need to straw man things if you're actually providing an important refutation of the point, Pierce. When you have to straw man everything and then you respond to the straw man and not the actual point being made, and it's insane, because that's what we heard for years. We said, oh, look at this, another terrorist attack. There have been tens of thousands of Islamic terrorist attacks carried out in the name of Allah just since 9/11. And we say, look, this keeps happening. And look, this person did this. Why? Because here's the command of Muhammad. You see the problem? Oh, so you're saying that every single Muslim is a terrorist? No one said that. And Gad repeatedly said the opposite. Yeah, there are plenty of nice Muslims. Yeah, plenty of friendly Muslims. Plenty of lovely Muslims. Oh, so I don't get this idea that every one of the 5 million Muslims in the U.S. is about to go on a killing spree. I don't understand that. How can someone say that? No one's saying that, you moron.
Yeah. Even Tommy Robinson
changing his name to Pierce Moron. What?
Yeah, even Tommy Robinson, he starts out by saying yeah, most of my best friends are Muslims. He's like, my problem is with Islam.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's one, you have sort of a difficulty in that you have Muslims with very dangerous ideas who will tell you they're dangerous ideas. You have other Muslims with very dangerous ideas who won't tell you they're dangerous ideas. They'll tell you exactly what you want to hear and how they have nothing but good intentions. Guess what? You also have Muslims who have nothing but good intentions. They don't want to subjugate you. They want to live normal lives and stuff, and they'd love to get along with you. So notice you have two categories of Muslims who are both telling you that Islam is peaceful and wonderful and they have nothing but good intentions. Some of them are sincere. Some of them are insincere. What's that got to do with anything that anyone is saying here?
Nothing.
Pierce.
Ridiculous. And I use the same argument to apply to Muslims in the UK. Yeah, we've got nearly 5 million Muslims. Actually, the vast majority are peaceful and assimilate very well into our
And the vast majority of men don't grape women. Therefore, grape is not a problem.
Society and live alongside Christians, Hindus, and the rest of it.
No,
why
they
should I
don't.
be particularly exercised about the fact that their religion, Islam, has different criteria and creed to my
Different
Catholicism, for example? That's fine. I can respect both, but I don't respect radical Christians, and I don't respect radical Muslims, and I don't respect radical Hindus. I don't respect radical people, full stop. They
I only respect stupid people who never understand any points. That way, when I look in the mirror, I can say, I appreciate you, Piers.
are dangerous. Terrorism comes from people who get radicalized. I just don't see in the UK that we have a mass problem with radical Muslims who've taken over the country.
It's still, guys, if you criticize Islam, oh, you're saying all 5 million Muslims are a danger. Oh, I will refute that bad idea that no one is saying. And here in the UK, the idea that these radical Muslims have taken over the entire system and they're running the country. I just don't see that. Literally no one is saying that, you moron. The people who are complaining about what radical Islam is doing, which we all know is just actually following Islam, is you're giving them foothold after foothold after foothold after foothold. And we've seen this play out time and time again for 14 centuries, that when that starts happening, Islam's on the path of ultimately taking over, and kind of hard to deal with when it really takes over. So the time to deal with it is before it's actually taking over. When you see some people trying to move pieces around to eventually take over, you deal with it when you can. And what happens is morons say, well, Assad hasn't taken over, so it can't be a problem. Don't worry about it now. Don't worry about it until. So the only time to worry about it, according to Piers, is when it's actually taken over and they're under full Sharia. That's when you should recognize the problem, when it's too late to stop. That's insanely stupid thinking. How does this guy have a show?
I think it's bullshit.
Okay. Because the strategic template on which Islam has operated is when in the minority, act meek and like a victim. But when in the majority, smite at the neck and show no mercy. That's why I drew the earlier analogy with shingles. It takes a tipping point in numbers for some of the things that you're not yet worried about to materialize, right? Lebanon was perfectly fine until there was an infusion of PLO terrorists and the demographics started shifting, and then it didn't go well. That applies to the 56 countries that I mentioned earlier. You also mentioned, by the way, there are no problems in the United States. Well, why don't you go tell some of the people who live in Dearborn whether there are any problems that are brewing in the horizon, or go tell the people who live in Minneapolis. Again, it's a question of numbers. And if I may, I'd like to flip it to you. You're the host, but if I can play host for a second, what would be the pattern that Piers Morgan would have to see for him to say, send Gad Saad an email and say, oops, Gad, I think you were onto something. Just give me a sense of what the data would need to look like for you to be concerned.
No, or he's going to say something ridiculous. Well, I have to see that Muslims have actually completely taken over the country, and that's the only thing that can convince me that there's any possible problem ever. And that's just another way of saying he's a complete idiot. Well, let's see. But I love that. So Gad finally flipped it back. It's like, okay, if seeing this, if seeing the grooming gangs, if seeing all the terrorist attacks, if looking at the statistics of how many, what percentage of these guys want Sharia, and what percentage of them want to execute apostates, and looking at, even when you had the grooming gangs, the other people who, even though they weren't engaged in it, didn't have a problem with it and didn't care. And even when you asked them, they did not care. If none of this convinces you that there's the slightest problem here, what would show you that what would be a warning to you? What would make you go, oh, we've got a problem now? Because it looks like the only thing that would convince you there's a problem is if Islam has just actually taken over completely and you're all subjugated. And that's the only thing. That's the only time you can be like, oh, now I need to be concerned. Let's see if there's anything.
I would have to see clear evidence that we were getting overrun by radical Muslims. Not Muslims, radical Muslims.
I would have to see that we are actually being overrun. Okay, so not until you're actually being overrun do you see a problem.
Yeah. And again, he makes the qualification
radical idea
Muslims versus radical
So we could
Muslims.
be completely overrun by Muslims as long as it's not radical Muslims.
Yeah.
That were fermented around violence. If I saw genuine evidence that was becoming more widespread, I would be seriously concerned. I don't see it. I see it. We were talking earlier about 85 Sharia councils being set up who operate amongst Muslim communities up and down the country, but they have no law under British law. And
Today
therefore
they
I don't particularly...
Yeah, you hear that? Today. We just got a bunch of Sharia courts. They're not outside the law today. These are
Yep.
stepping stones. They go
Yep.
somewhere. You don't just go from 0% Sharia compliant to 100% Sharia compliant overnight. You go 1%, then 2%, then 3%, and they are completely comfortable playing the long game here. And you, almost more than anyone I've seen in my life, are completely incapable of understanding the long game. You only understand the present moment. And if the present moment is not complete dystopia and you being completely destroyed by Sharia, then there can't possibly be a problem in the future. And he just admitted it. Let's see.
Today
No,
they don't.
so my
Forgive me for
point,
interrupting
right?
you.
So here's my point, Gad. I don't think that we should turn a blind eye to potential issues. I'm not saying some of the things you've raised.
Well, anytime someone brings something up, you deliberately turn a blind eye and don't understand anything. So
historically around the world have not manifested themselves. And I think it would be prudent to listen to that. You're a very wise man, very knowledgeable. I completely respect that. I do think it would be prudent of British governments, for example, to take the potential issues here seriously. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and say we've been overrun by
did Gad say that? Do you hear
It's
that,
just
guys?
a
He's still
red
responding
herring.
to something that Gad is not saying.
Yeah.
We've been completely overrun by radicals. I can't agree with that. Gad is repeatedly warning, just because something is not doing something right now does not mean it doesn't do that in the future. Something can lie dormant right now as it's slowly building, and then later it's this huge problem, and it's in your best interest to deal with it now before it's completely out of control. Can you get your mind around that? No. I don't understand how you could possibly tell me that we're completely overrun and that we're all doomed, that we're under the control of Sharia. It doesn't make any sense. I'm looking around, I'm not seeing it.
radical Muslims. Let's make sure we protect our values in this country, make sure that people are genuinely assimilated, and make sure if we sense that there is a rising tide of violent radical extremism from any part of our community, that we stamp on it very quickly. And that, I think, would be a prudent way to deal with a problem that is not evident to me yet. But as you say, who can predict the future? Gad, I'm going to leave it there. Fascinating conversation. I love having you on Uncensored. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
He ignored everything he said.
Yeah, and then especially that last idiotic thing. Well, yeah, we got to be on our guard against extremism from wherever it would come from. No, because you can't, Piers. Because anyone who's doing something dangerous is going to be a minority of whatever group they're from, and according to you, that means you shouldn't care even slightly. And if a person says there's a problem, if a person says, "Hey, we got this dangerous group over here that's doing this," you go, "Hang on, I'm looking around. They don't run the country, so there's no problem, is there? There's no problem." Oh, shouldn't even have watched that, man. Shouldn't even have watched that. It's like, gosh, you just always think it's like, okay, people were saying this idiotic stuff decades ago, and you think they get the point over time and that they'll learn. And here we are, 20 years, Piers has learned nothing, not one thing. Grooming gangs, terrorist attacks, he's learned ISIS, he's learned nothing at all, and still doesn't understand the most basic fundamental concepts within Islam. But loves talking about them, happy to talk about them, just does not understand anything. He gets everything wrong, everything. That's the UK. Aussie Abe says, we're doing some open air preaching for Ramadan in Sydney. Pray for us. Pray for them. Amen. This is good stuff, guys. Yeah.
Nice.
All you Christians out there, when Muslims are like setting up in public and so on, that's a good time, right? That's a good time to do open air preaching, street evangelism, street polemics, responding to stuff. It's a good time for it. It's a good time for it. And everyone needs to be doing that. And so I said Christians there, talking about evangelism. If you're not a Christian, still got to do the polemics. It's a good time to be spreading information about Islam. Keep in mind, Christians, Jews, Hindus, atheists, even you Muslims who aren't part of the correct group, we're all in the same ballpark here. There are people who want to violently subjugate us or wipe us out. We're all kind of on the same side of that issue. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I recently downloaded TikTok again because I'm getting ready for our takeover, and I was surprised how widespread the Islamic dilemma has become. Like even atheists are referencing it, and it's just amazing to see. So yeah, that's something you can take to these places and run the Islamic dilemma by these Muslims while they're feasting.
Also, I love your recent Ramadan video. If you're talking about the one I posted earlier today. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Always cool filming on location. Sir, cobwebs for brains cannot be this obtuse. That's what it seems like, right?
Yeah.
It's normal for the host to counter argue the guest. Yeah, but you can normally tell when a person is just kind of playing devil's advocate and responding to point to get the person to respond to common objections. Piers seems to really believe that there's a difference, right? There's a difference between just playing devil's advocate with someone to get them to respond to objections, and then you falling back on the points you always fall back on, which is constantly defending Islam against objections and so on.
And it's not exactly a counter argument to bring up like a previous guest's argument and force your current guest to defend that argument. That's not a counter argument. That's like we're in a different conversation.
One second. Did want to go over to the comments here, and there we go. Yep, Jai on TikTok. Yeah. Oh, it's not gonna just be Jai. It's gonna be Jai. It's gonna be DOC. It's gonna be the Dizzle. Yes, we're gonna invade and take over TikTok, guys.
Yeah. Get ready.
Saad is a psychologist. His ability to meet people where they are is part of the training he would have received. I'm a psych student currently. Yeah, that's what I mean. How depressing is it when you're doing everything that you've ever learned about how to convey a point to someone and they just will not get it? That's got to suck. Even Muhammad admitted that human beings generally do not like unaliving others. It may be that a thing that is good for you, maybe that the thing is good for you, even though you dislike it. Yeah, and that was Allah responding to people who didn't want to go wage jihad. Hey, maybe that something you don't like is actually good for you.
Yep. Which goes into a whole other argument about like the fitra that Muslims have, which is like this natural inclination for things. But Allah is like, actually, that's not trustworthy because you might think something is good when it's bad, or bad that's good.
Piers would say the world wars came out of nowhere based on what I'm hearing right now. Yeah, so in other words, if you were able to go back a couple years before the world war and you say, hey, look, these Germans are doing, hang on. It's not like the world has erupted into war and millions of people are dying, right? Come on, let's not exaggerate. Here. There's no problem whatsoever. Sargon went over Britain's thinking U.S. is a war zone. Sargon of Akkad? They actually think it's a war zone over here? That's weird. That's what it was like. I heard that this was back in the 1980s. But so this is before the collapse of the Soviet Union. They interviewed kids in the Soviet Union about what life is like in the U.S. And it was just, they thought it was terrible. And there's just terrorist attacks left and right and all this stuff. And it's like, where are you guys getting this from? Yeah. So, guys, yeah, we have problems in the U.S. And, not like they got in the U.K. Let me just put it that way. Piers got a Qatari invite 2 years ago. He got paid. That's what I mean. I don't know. Like that would explain things with Piers. It would explain things with Tucker, especially, or with Candace and so on. Some of these things would explain things, but you don't know because there's other things that can explain the same data. Like just being in the UK and going through their education system and being bombarded all your life with, if you're a good person, then you can never understand Islam. And only evil people actually understand it. You don't underestimate the psychological pressure that puts on people. Yeah, it kind of sucks. That's it. I'm cracking open my jar of old smoky moonshine. Piers raises my blood pressure. Yeah, send me a jar of that. Narrator's voice. Yes, the UK is cooked. Do you think Piers really doesn't get it, or is he paid by Qatar or something? Again, it seems like the most common explanation. If you're just told all your life, from the time you're in school all the way up, and then all your fellow journalists and all your politicians are all saying, hey, only an evil person sees anything wrong with Islam. Only a racist sees anything wrong with Islam. You don't want to be a racist, do you? No? Okay, then you never see it. You can just be trained that I have to think this way or I'm evil. As soon as you've absorbed the idea that seeing something over here is evil, well, you just have a resistance to ever thinking like that because you don't want to be evil. Can you say a list of names in your Sajid voice? What's a Sajid voice? I mean, Sajid?
Like
Sajid
whispering?
Lippum?
Like whispering? I don't know.
Well,
Sajid,
I'm thinking what he means by Sajid. Wonder if he means Sajid Lippum.
yeah.
But yeah, Sajid would say, a list of names. That's how he would say it. Can't expect anything more from an Arsenal fan. I'm guessing that's soccer, right? Zut. That's the comment. Zut. 3 verses from Quran that described one event when Allah turned a group of fishermen into apes and pigs for fishing on a Saturday, not Friday. That's kind of not a sentence, so I don't know if that's a question or... disheartening thing is 20 guys committed to coming to street evangelize during Ramadan, but due to fear have backed out. Come down, D. Wood and Jai. Well, I hope there's some still left.
Australia.
Keep in mind, even if plenty of people back out, as long as you got a solid few, don't underestimate the power of a solid core. And we see that biblically. Gideon and so on. Jihad historically is a form of human sacrifice to Allah, deleting non-believers for divine favor. Yeah, I've pointed out before, it's a death cult. You want your enemies dead and yourselves dead in the way of Allah. I mean, it's like they're just ignoring the last 150 years of European history. Open a book, dingus. Well, much longer than that. They're talking almost 14 centuries of European history. It did not take Islam long before it started invading Europe. And it has been relentless in trying to do so. 14 centuries almost of Islam trying to take Europe. And after 14 centuries almost of failing, invading, some success. They took over Spain and so on. They kept invading Eastern Europe and so on. They were all the way up into France. But they would eventually be driven back out, repulsed. But after 14 centuries of failing, Europeans got the brilliant idea, hey, why don't we just invite them in? They keep trying to take it, but it hasn't worked for them, so we want to show what nice guys we are. We'll just hand it to them. Brilliant. Super smart. I used to think these people were just stupid. That may still be true. But when all the errors go in one direction, I have to assume it's not an accident.
Yeah.
I am not Islamophobic. I'm an Allah phylactic. And Piers may be a product of 20 generations of cousin marriage as well. That would be another alternative explanation. Could come from some wealthy family that wanted to keep the wealth all in the same family, and so they all just marry their first cousins forever. That would explain things. All right, Jai, we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. I think I don't know what you're doing tomorrow, but I'm probably going to check out the rest of that tomorrow because you had other people there and you had a good mixture of I'm guessing it was pretty action packed because he had a bunch of loudmouths on there and stuff. I'm guessing they had an entertaining discussion. So I'm going to, unless something else happens, going to check that out tomorrow. But what are your thoughts on all this stuff here before we close out?
But yeah, it's hard to like you said, it's, the easiest explanation is that he's just like has a bad education and he's like been like liberalized and he has been trained to think when you identify Islam as a problem, that's evil to do. So you can't do that because you don't want to be evil. And there's that. I think there's also a spiritual element as well that even though he claims to be Catholic, Yeah, he claims to be Catholic, but he's he's clearly not a practicing Christian, and so yeah. Yeah, we just pray for the UK, guys. That's my conclusion. Pray for the UK. Because a lot of
That's
people
sort
think like Piers Morgan. More people think like Piers Morgan than they think like, God. So in the UK.
and that's something I think about as well, a spiritual component. Sometimes
Yeah.
I think like, are you just under divine judgment? Like, I'm not even thinking like Satan's pulling the strings. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
there are times when God's like, oh, you want to go in that direction? Fine.
Yep.
You're going in that direction. And hearts get hardened and so on. You see in the Exodus with the Pharaoh, it said Pharaoh hardened his heart. Pharaoh hardened his heart. Pharaoh hardened his heart. Moses talked to him. Then Pharaoh hardened his heart. Then Pharaoh hardened his heart. And all of a sudden it says, and God hardened Pharaoh's heart. It's like, oh, you want to rebel? Now you're locked into it, buddy. You're locked into it. And then he couldn't see out of it. Then he lacked all. He just, there was not a drop of common sense left in his head. So.
Yeah.
Stuff to think about, guys. Stuff to think about. Last two super chats here. Regardless if it's a Qatar payment or another agenda, it's clear he's being purposely obtuse. I don't really think he's this stupid. In fact, he's smart enough to play stupid convincingly. That's the problem. When you have people who are intelligent and they don't understand it. That's where the mystery comes in. Why doesn't this otherwise intelligent person understand this very, very, very simple point that a child would be able to understand? And so you start thinking, okay, spiritual component, psychological issues, being paid, all kinds of those things emerge. And it just sucks that it's so common. And it's like, okay, if Gad Saad can't convince you that there's any sort of issue right there and you still don't understand the point, and there's tons of people like that, and that's like most of your government officials and most of your police and most of your journalists and stuff, it's like, oh gosh. That's why, guys, it's actually easier to go to regular people. It's easier to go to regular people who have more at stake than rich people who are living in, who don't have to deal with the problems. And that's why we talk to the regular people. And if you get enough regular people who catch on, then guess what? They can pick their journalists and they can pick their elected officials and so on. So the ultimate danger to Islam, I've been saying for years, is an informed population of free people. That is Islam's kryptonite. So learn your stuff, guys. Learn your stuff. Doug, 10 Apple, Earthworm Jim can intimate he's 6'8". The fight between boys that was deemed Islamophobia, and Piers Morgan attacked Tommy Robinson. No, he wouldn't do that. Can you do a Mojab impression using Sajid's voice? You were talking about Sajid. You're finished. Yeah, what are the other Muhammad Hijab lines, man?
Yeah, you're finished. You're done. You've been intellectually humiliated.
Are you that intellectually molested? Yeah, we'd have to do it. But yeah, that'd be Sajid if he was doing it. It would be funny to see Sajid acting like Muhammad Hijab, something like that. That would be funny. All right, guys. So be back tomorrow. Unless something changes. Something could always change, or there could be some more important thing. But I did want to check out the rest of that interview where he's got some other people going back and forth and discussing the grooming gangs and things like that. So be checking that out tomorrow. And Monday should have a video up going through a lot of the interesting things that happened in Times Square. And then Monday night, going to have Anthony and Hatun on, and we'll go through some clips, and we can all discuss because we were there a long time. And again, it ended after it was over. Then it was just like mob for a while, mob with some hotheads in it, and then calm down into some nice conversations and so on. So
yeah, Drake said he had a bunch of good conversations too. I think he said that your son caught it on a video. He was like catching a bunch of it on video. And apparently the Warner wasn't the only one who was being aggressive as well. So there might be
no, he wasn't. No, he wasn't.
Yeah.
There were other people being aggressive. Yeah. Mostly afterwards.
They're just hangry, right?
Yeah, and that's what's amazing. It's like the peace of Ramadan, blah, 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 blah. then they freak out, but like extremely like foul language and screaming and yelling and saying the stupidest things and blasphemy left and right and so on. But got it on camera, guys.
Nice.
Always get it on camera. Ostation said, I think you missed my super chat. I might have missed it. Okay. 98% of the time when someone says, I've already said it, 98% of the time, speaking of statistics, 98% of the time when someone says, you missed my super chat, no, that person missed you going over their super chat. And I've repeatedly proven this over and over again, but I will go back just to prove my point yet again for the 487 millionth time. This is the comment from earlier. Is it wrong to say that the peaceful Muslims are the radicalists since the Quran and Hadith teach these? Yep, we did read that. So you're wrong again, Ostation. With that said, it's pretty common. It's not like every person pays complete attention to every second of a couple-hour live stream. So totally forgivable. And yet we will not forgive. Okay. Decide whether to ban you. We are also street preaching Mardi Gras, Sydney. We need your alter ego. There's Mardi Gras in Sydney? I didn't even know that. I thought Mardi Gras I thought Mardi Gras was just New Orleans. That is interesting to me. Huh. Hey.
Who's your alter ego?
Yeah, I don't know. Hey, but I do have my
Oh, David Segarra.
Oh, yeah. I do have my Bourbon Street. You guys probably don't have that Mardi Gras down under, but Mardi Gras in New Orleans, Bourbon Street is the place to go. I've mentioned before. Many years ago, my dad was drunk and someone told him it was almost impossible to get one of those signs down, but he had his tools in his truck. And so he wanted to prove the person wrong. And he said it was indeed very difficult with the things they put on there so that people couldn't go down there. But anyway, he got that sign. So
a piece of history.
I got a piece of history right here. I got the Bourbon Street sign. I'm going to have to find a nice place for that until the city of New Orleans decides, this was 40 years ago or something like that, but we got to get that sign back. City of New Orleans, if you want your sign back, I'll give it back because it was technically stolen, but I don't know how things work from, 40 some years ago. I don't know. And what do we have here? Ramadan was the worst time of terrorist attacks when I was on deployment. Oh, yeah. Because your rewards get multiplied. If you do something, your rewards are multiplied in Ramadan. So people think, oh, that means it's a month of peace. No, it's a month. If you're planning an attack, you do it there, and then your rewards get multiplied and so on. But it is way worse when you have a group that's calling for attacks. Like ISIS used to do that. They would call for attacks during Ramadan and so on. And so all these people that you think they're not harmful. No, when I mentioned there are people who are waiting for orders, some of them are waiting for orders from groups like that. And so you'd see these big spikes in attacks, and that's why we'd talk about the Ramadan bombathon back then, because it was the bloodiest month of the year for several years in a row. Fortunately, ISIS started waning, and then you had the attacks falling down. But following Piers Morgan's, that means there'll never be a problem in the future. No, you still need to get the point. You need to get the point in your head. Some people are waiting. They're waiting and preparing.
Yeah.
And Malik needs a Snickers. He's not the same when he's hungry. Yeah, poor guy. Heard he just spent all last night whining while he's live. And no you and AP in Boom Boom Room with Mo. Oh. Wait, you want me and AP in the Boom Boom Room with Muhammad? I've already been in the Boom Boom Room. And AP has as well.
Yeah. You guys did the Queers for Palestine thing.
Yeah. So yeah, we've both been in there. We both done a bunch of AP's done. He did the Boom Boom Room as himself. Then he was Sigmund Freud, and then we did the Queers for Palestine one. So he's been in 3, and I've been in a ton. All right, guys, have some more stuff for you tomorrow and Monday. We'll catch you all then.